Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to another edition of Crimes of the Week International. Representatives from Australia's New South Wales police say that they are on the hunt for at least 3 unknown suspects this week after a grandmother was gunned down inside of her own home in what is believed to be a targeted drive-by shooting. The incident unfolded at around 11 p.m. on April 14th at a residence in the southwest Sydney suburb of Ambervale. 65-year-old grandmother Kim Duncan was sitting in the front room of her home on Dickens Road when suddenly a hail of gunshots began outside. Moments earlier, a dark sedan had reportedly pulled up to the address and 3 people got out. The suspects proceeded to shoot indiscriminately into the front of the house. At least 9 shots were fired before the unknown attackers fled the scene, with one of those bullets hitting Kim in the leg. Other residents on the street heard the terrifying gunshots, followed by the heartbreaking sounds of Kim's 34-year-old son Shane. He was yelling for help and saying that his mom had been shot. Shane and his 21-year-old partner were also inside the house during the shooting, but neither of them were injured. After rushing to the scene, paramedics worked for over an hour to try and stabilize Kim so that she could be taken to the hospital. However, sadly, they were unsuccessful, and she ended up dying from her injuries a short time later. So far, police say that they are still searching for the people responsible and that no arrests have been made in connection with the incident. They have stated that they believe the attack was targeted, though they are not sure who the actual target was. According to investigators, Kim and her family had only moved into the house where the shooting took place a few weeks ago, but they added that they were previously known to police. In fact, Kim's son Shane was arrested a couple of days later in an unrelated incident. Even with the attack allegedly being targeted, the situation has left the community shaken. Police say that they understand the concerns, with Superintendent Grant Healy stating in part, quote, "It's abhorrent. Somebody coming up to a house and putting shots off is totally reckless, and the consequences are catastrophic. It's tragic. The grandmother of your children's been shot by cowards that stood out the front of the house." At the time of this recording, police are working to identify those responsible and are asking for the public's help. Anyone with dash cam or surveillance footage related to the incident is asked to contact the New South Wales Police immediately. A high-speed police chase nearly ended in tragedy last week when things spiraled out of control on a UK highway, resulting in a crash involving several patrol cars as well as the vehicle they were pursuing. According to Northumbria Police, the whole thing began at around 2 a.m. on April 9th, when officers on patrol spotted a dark grey BMW driving dangerously near the village of Wickham. The officers attempted to stop the driver, however he and his female passenger allegedly refused to pull over and sped off. After alerting other nearby members of law enforcement, police spotted the BMW again a short time later traveling northbound on the A1 motorway. That's when multiple officers joined in on the response and began a chase. The pursuit continued into Newcastle, but unfortunately things went sideways as the vehicles raced towards a junction near the Denton Burn area. At approximately 2:27 a.m., several of the cars collided, leading to a massive crash on the road. The resulting impact totaled a couple of the 5 patrol cars involved in the chase, including one which had its roof ripped completely off. When paramedics arrived at the scene, 7 police officers were taken to nearby hospitals. Thankfully, none of their injuries were life-threatening, and all of them have since been discharged, though when you look at the carnage, it's easy to see how things could have turned out differently. As for the male suspect and female passenger, neither of them were injured, but they were both arrested at the scene. The driver, identified only as a man in his 20s, was arrested on suspicion of causing serious injury by dangerous driving. He is now being investigated for this, as well as other offenses, including failing to stop when required by police and having no insurance. The female passenger, also in her 20s, was initially arrested on suspicion of aiding and abetting dangerous driving. It appears police are no longer pursuing this charge against her. However, she is now being investigated for suspected possession of Class A and B drugs. Both suspects have since been released on bail. Representatives from Japan's Tokyo Metropolitan Police say that a 58-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder this week, following a shocking and brazen incident in which he allegedly stabbed his wife to death in the middle of a crowded supermarket. The disturbing crime unfolded at around 11 a.m. on April 13th at a Seiyu grocery store in the city of Kiyose. Police were called to the scene after they were alerted by terrified shoppers who said that they had seen a woman being attacked on the business's third floor. When officers arrived, they found the victim, a 56-year-old identified only by the name Masuyo, lying on the floor unconscious. She had suffered stab wounds to her chest and right arm, and a blood-stained knife was lying next to her. She was rushed to the hospital, but went into cardiac arrest on the way and sadly died. While this was happening, Masuyo's husband, 58-year-old Takayuki Kanazawa, was apparently standing nearby. He allegedly made no attempt to flee and admitted to stabbing his wife when questioned by police. As if this wasn't chilling enough, according to reports, Kanazawa purchased the knife used in the crime from the same store where this all took place. According to investigators, he bought the knife from the household goods section of the supermarket immediately after arriving, fatally attacking Masuyo about 5 minutes later. Despite the alleged confession, we still don't have much information about why Kanazawa did what he did. All the 58-year-old apparently told police was that he and his wife had been in an argument over their finances before the attack. He was arrested on suspicion of murder immediately afterwards and currently remains in custody. A young Indian woman and her friend are lucky to be alive this week after they were the victims of a terrifying and brazen attack at the alleged hands of her deranged stalker ex-landlord. According to local media sources, the problems began for the 21-year-old female victim several years ago when she and her family rented a house from the suspect, identified as a 37-year-old software engineer named Srikanth. By the way, the two victims' names have not been released at the time of this recording, so we're going to be using the same aliases as most local news outlets, Priya and Varun. Anyway, while living at the rental home in the city of Bengaluru, Priya was stalked by Srikanth. Even though the 37-year-old had a wife and 2 kids, he reportedly engaged in a variety of creepy behavior against her and continuously tried to pressure her into having a relationship with him. Priya went to her parents and Srikanth's wife about what was happening, but this apparently had no impact on his actions. As a result, about a year ago, Priya and her family decided to move. For a while, it seemed like the 21-year-old was finally free, and she went on with her life as usual. However, that apparently changed about 3 months ago, when Srikanth figured out her new address. From that point on, he began following her again, only stopping briefly after the police got involved. But even this was not enough, because as Priya was about to find out, Srikanth was willing to go to incredibly disturbing lengths to get what he wanted. On April 8th, after Priya finished up school for the day, she was sitting at a transit stop near her university campus with her friend Varun. It was around 6:30 p.m., and the pair were talking while they were waiting for the bus to get there, when suddenly Srikanth came and sat down next to them. Immediately, Priya pulled out her phone and began trying to call for help. However, before she could do so, Srikanth snatched the device from her hands. According to reports, he also punched her in the face and began screaming at her, yelling, quote, "You said you don't love me, but you are in love with this person?" Moments later, Srikanth also allegedly began attacking Varun, pulling out a knife as well. He then began trying to stab both of them in the neck, telling Priya he wouldn't leave until Varun was dead. Luckily, Priya and Varun were able to fight off Srikanth together, and their screams attracted other bystanders who intervened. The Good Samaritans were able to hold Srikanth long enough until police arrived and placed him under arrest. While Priya and Varun both survived, they still needed to be hospitalized for cutting injuries to their hands and faces. It's also easy to imagine how things could have turned out far worse. At the time of this recording, police say that Srikanth remains in custody and that they are preparing to file charges against him. Authorities in the Thai province of Chiang are dealing with the aftermath of an equally weird and embarrassing situation this week, after a man arrested in connection with a local theft managed to slip through their fingers, or should I say their roof, after he was placed in the back of a police vehicle. According to reports, the man in question, identified as 25-year-old Armo Shamu, was arrested on April 9th after he was suspected of being involved in a theft that had taken place earlier that morning. It's not clear why police believed he was responsible. In fact, they say that they knew they didn't have enough to hold him for very long. Their plan was apparently to take him from the local station in Mayao Subdistrict to the office of the Attorney General on consideration of charges, after which they were going to release him. That makes what happened next even stranger. After placing Sharmu in the back of a police transport vehicle, officers temporarily left him there. However, before they could start their journey, the 25-year-old apparently damaged a panel connected to the roof from inside, allowing him to crawl out and escape. Footage taken from nearby surveillance cameras shows Sharmu running down the street in the moments immediately afterwards. At the time of this recording, police have yet to find the 25-year-old, and they have admitted that tracking him down will likely be difficult. However, in an unfortunate twist for Sharmu, it seems that because of his escape, police now officially do have enough to charge him with a crime. In addition to the potential theft offenses, authorities say he's looking at up to 3 years in prison plus a hefty fine for escaping while being detained by a court. Authorities in the South Korean capital of Seoul released a disturbing update in the case of a murdered woman this week, announcing that they had officially indicted her newlywed husband for the chilling crime. The case began sometime on the morning of March 13th, when the suspect, identified only by the last name of Saw, called his mother-in-law claiming that something terrible had happened. Saw stated that he had just returned home from work to find his new wife, a woman in her 30s identified only by the initial A, unresponsive inside. Saw apparently sounded frantic during the call and said, quote, "I don't know why she's like this." When emergency responders were called to the scene, A was pronounced dead, and it seems that initially the situation was treated as a freak accident. Saw claimed that he had no idea what had happened, and making matters even more tragic, he and A had only been married 3 months earlier. However, when an autopsy was conducted and investigators began taking a closer look at the situation, they soon found some details that didn't add up, particularly marks on A's neck that made it clear that she had been strangled. Police also learned that immediately after A's death, Saw had deleted a surveillance camera app they used at their home and had removed the SIM card from A's phone. It turned out A's phone contained even more unsettling information. In conversations with friends and family members, she spoke about her new husband's obsessive and violent personality. She said that he demanded sex from her constantly, even just days after she was recovering from a miscarriage. In one exchange, she referred to Saw as a psychopath and suggested she was scared of him. On March 20th, Saw was arrested during the middle of A's wake. He was taken into custody directly from the funeral home, and according to family members, he did not seem surprised by this. Instead, he appeared to smile during the arrest, telling A's mother, quote, "I'll be back." While Saw continued to deny having anything to do with his wife's murder when he was initially taken to the police station, this apparently changed once he was confronted with some of the evidence detectives had uncovered. However, even after admitting to the killing, he allegedly tried to downplay responsibility by claiming that he was drunk when he strangled A, and that he simply gave in to a dark impulse. This week, authorities announced that they had officially indicted Saw on murder charges. He currently remains in custody, and A's family members say that they will continue to fight for justice for her death. Authorities in the Argentine city of Córdoba say that a 22-year-old man has been sentenced this week, following his brutal murder of a female classmate and social media influencer who believed he was her close friend. The case began on the night of July 17, 2024, when 21-year-old Catalina Gutierrez left her home for what was supposed to be a fun night out. She had planned to meet up with her boyfriend, Lazaro Leda, and a few other friends at a bowling alley at the local Patio Olmos shopping center. She headed out just after 9 p.m., sending a voice message to Lazaro, letting him know that she was on her way. In the message, nothing at all seemed out of the ordinary. However, Catalina would never arrive. After repeated calls and text messages went unanswered, Lazaro and Catalina's friends contacted her family. They had no idea where she was either. The last time they had seen her, she was driving away from their house in her mother's silver hatchback. What made everyone even more worried was that Catalina also hadn't been on her social media accounts. The 21-year-old was incredibly active on Instagram and TikTok, where she had amassed well over 100,000 followers. Alarmed by all of this, loved ones decided to contact police. A search was quickly launched for Catalina. However, it came to a devastating end just hours later. Using location services on her phone, the 21-year-old's sister managed to find the last place the device had pinged. It led her and the rest of her family to a quiet neighborhood in the south of the city where they found the silver hatchback abandoned. In the trunk was Catalina's body. Not only had she been viciously murdered, but it appeared that whoever had done this had tried to set her and the vehicle on fire to cover up what had happened. Fortunately, the fire had failed to spread, leaving behind plenty of evidence for police. That evidence, in combination with more location data from Catalina's phone, eventually led them to her killer, 22-year-old Nestor Soto. This revelation came as a shock to Catalina's family because Soto was supposed to be one of Catalina's close friends. He was a fellow architecture student at the university she attended, and over the last couple of years they had spent a lot of time together. Catalina's loved ones would later tell local news media that Soto had been over to their house countless times, and that they had never suspected anything. However, it's now been revealed that Soto's so-called friendship with Catalina was incredibly toxic. He wanted to control everything that the 21-year-old did and was jealous and possessive over her. Things only got worse when Catalina started dating Lazaro. A search of Soto's internet history during the investigation showed that he was obsessively visiting Catalina's social media profiles in the days leading up to her murder to try and figure out information about her relationship. In a confession during questioning, Soto said that on the night of the killing, he was also supposed to be part of the group of friends that was going bowling. He asked Catalina to come and pick him up on her way to the mall, but when she got there, instead, he invited her in and told her that he was in love with her. When she explained that she was happy with her boyfriend, Soto flew into a rage. Unable to handle the rejection, he snapped and strangled Catalina to death. He admitted that afterwards he had driven her body to the place where the car was later found abandoned and tried to set everything on fire to destroy the evidence. Soto was recently convicted of aggravated homicide in the context of gender-based violence, with most of the information we know about the case coming out during court proceedings. Because of the incredibly brutal and senseless nature of the crime, Soto was sentenced to life in prison this week. Representatives from the Russian Investigative Committee say that a 29-year-old mother is in custody and is facing charges this week following an absolutely gut-wrenching incident during which she allegedly murdered 3 of her 4 young children in a horrifying axe attack. The whole thing began sometime on the afternoon of April 14th, when the woman in question, Valentina Mitko, was home alone with her 3 sons and 1 daughter in the central Russian town of Kansk. While the exact circumstances of how the situation unfolded are unclear, what we do know is that it took place while Mitko's husband, a driver, was at work. At some point, the 29-year-old mother grabbed an axe that was on the property and began brutally hacking her children to death. Neighbors reportedly heard loud screams coming from the residence, though it apparently wasn't until quite a bit later that police were finally called. By that time, Mitko had allegedly killed 3 of the children. After taking the surviving child, a 7-year-old boy, to her parents' place, she broke down in tears and explained what had happened. Upon verifying the nightmare situation inside the house, the 29-year-old's father called for help. Sadly, when police arrived, there was nothing they could do for Mitko's 3 other children. Her 8-year-old son and 4-year-old daughter were found dead inside the property with visible wounds to their heads. Horrifically, it's been reported that the head of her 7-month-old son had been removed entirely and put into a cupboard. Chilling partial video footage released by authorities shows officers investigating the crime scene and finding the large, rusty axe allegedly used in the crime. Following her arrest, Mitko reportedly told officers that she could not explain what had happened. However, she seemed to be aware of her actions, later providing details about the axe and how the crime had unfolded. As for why she left her 7-year-old son alive, she claimed she, quote, did not have the strength to deal with him. Reports appear to differ slightly on the details here, with some seeming to suggest that the child returned home from school later than his siblings, and that's why he was not harmed, while others state that he was in the house during the attack but was in a different room. Mitko has now been charged with multiple counts of murder. However, she is not the only one facing potential legal penalties. According to Russian media sources, officials are also planning to prosecute several local social workers as well. This news was revealed after investigators learned that the 29-year-old mother had been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. It's alleged that the social workers knew about this and that the children were in danger, but did nothing to intervene. This is especially galling when you know that there were already abuse allegations in the home on top of this. According to reports, Mitko's husband had previously been cited for beating one of their sons. Neighbors of the family described the husband as tyrannical in local news reports, suggesting that there had been red flags concerning the treatment of the children for some time. Currently, Valentina Mitko remains in custody and was ordered to be detained for at least the next 2 months while the investigation continues. The 29-year-old is also expected to undergo a psychiatric evaluation. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.